Hello everyone! As most of you know, I was invited to the North American media tour for Shadowbringers earlier this month on the 22nd, just a couple of days ago of recording this now. There I was able to play an early build of Shadowbringers and get some hands-on experience with all of the jobs, new and old. Videos for those should be up now, but what I want to talk about here is the time I got to directly interview Yoshi-P. There they split us up into pairs, and we got to take turns asking our questions about the upcoming expansion. I was conducting my interview with Spofie, who is a wonderful Final Fantasy XIV streamer, so if you haven't heard of her, if you haven't checked her out yet, go check out the link down below, you won't regret it. Now, I didn't record any of Spofie's questions or answers that she got, but I will be sharing what I asked with you now, along with Yoshida's answers. Any fellow Monster Hunter World fans might want to stick around to the end for a special little bonus there. With that being said, let's get into the interview. This first question was pertaining to Monk and how it played. So I asked, I really enjoy playing Monk, and so in Stormblood when things started slowing down with Riddle of Fire, it started to feel like we were going fast, then slow. And it still feels like it slows down in these burst phases, and especially with Six-Sided Star, with what I played with it, it slows a lot of stuff down. Is there any reason behind slowing it down for a kind of burst phase instead of having more of a consistent style like it was in Heavensward and 2.0? Or is there something that makes it more active that we haven't quite figured out yet, or maybe I'm overlooking? He replied, to be completely frank, if we were to delve into the details of it, it would sort of give ideas of what skill rotations and combos you want to be pursuing, so we don't want to spoil that. That's a sort of honest gut feeling I have. Of course, that being said, it does tie into the reason that we didn't incorporate that fourth stack of Grease Lightning at Stormblood, but again, we didn't want to have the disparity between the DPS with players who are more well versed in rotating these skills and those who may not be as familiar with maneuvering these different actions, and we didn't want to have that sort of difference. We felt that players could not handle the Monk very easily, and we didn't want players to think that Monk was too complicated or hard to use. So throughout 3.0, we understood that the trickiness of it was definitely an issue that we wanted to address, and so by Stormblood in the 4.0 series, we tried to make sure that we wanted it to be a little more consistent. Through the learnings that we found out through Stormblood, and people have fed back during that update, that Monk was still very boring, and it was not a fun job to handle. That's when we made the decision for Shadowbringers to sort of change it again. Shift it so that we are trying to align closer to what players are requesting and wanting, and that's what led to how the Monk plays out currently, what you had experienced and what's going to be in Shadowbringers. But at the same time, we still have the potential issue of the disparity between players' skills. So we do have that sort of fast pace again, but we wanted to make sure that it didn't get too fast, that it would exclude some players and create that disparity in their skill level. That's the thinking that went into the updates that we made for Shadowbringers. In terms of how the Monk plays out, you have to understand that currently they have the AF gear. So the performance right now is sort of your level 80 AF gear. And when you start considering about when you swap it out with raid gear, when you advance further within the patch series, there will be equipment that will raise your skill speed as well. So we've already built that into consideration and how much things will speed up through that as well. Once Shadowbringers does release, I think you can try experimenting to try changing up the skill speed, and I think you'll see why we had designed it so that we had that change in pace. Now, if I'm going to be honest, that's not exactly the answer that I wanted to hear, but I do understand kind of what they were going for, though I really got comfortable with weaving things in off-global cooldowns between the main rotation, even at with Arrow. Increasing my skill speed at Grease Lightning 3. So I really wouldn't consider that as a high skill level, and I think that's pretty standard, personally. But it seems as though they feel that being able to weave in those abilities as soon as they come off cooldown, being able to manage your abilities is still pretty up there, and they want people who aren't as adept at that to kind of have a better chance when things slow down. I mean, I liked it a little bit faster paced. I liked going on. I felt that if it was twice as fast and you're just able to hit your off globals in a burst phase or anything like that, you're still getting all your damage out in that time in that window, that time frame. That was just my thinking. That's my preferred playstyle, but it doesn't feel too bad. Honestly, we didn't get to play on a dummy, and we didn't get to play the dungeon at level 80, so I really can't say how the rotation feels at a higher level or how it's really supposed to go. It's in a weird state right now, not in a bad way, but it's just going to take a while to figure out. But anyway, that's kind of where they are with that. They want to make it more accessible, And I understand if things get too fast, too quick, then it might turn people off to trying it if they're just getting into the game. So I understand kind of where he's coming from there. As much as I would prefer that more consistent style, and I think those of us who are more comfortable with it do enjoy that. Having that slowdown, I guess, does kind of accommodate people who are new to it and kind of allow them the chance to assimilate. But hopefully it doesn't break it up too much for those of us who are comfortable with it. And we will have to kind of bide our time and see what comes of it. Now, this next question was a little rocky starting off. I don't know if it was a mistranslation going to him or if he just misinterpreted what I was saying. But it seemed like it was taken as I was coming at them, and I really wasn't. But I was asking him about the difference in kind of reactions of what the dev team wants things to be like, or what their intentions are, and how the players receive it. And so, since Machinist and Dark Knight got pretty major overhauls, I wanted to see if they had any recommendations of maybe look at it this way or consider it like this. Which eventually we did get to, but anyway, let me get into the question and I will get you the answer and all that fun stuff. Through the past, players have kind of reacted to changes or improvements in a different way than is really intended. So with Ninja, players were finding a rotation that was doing more damage than was intended, and with Heavensward Bard, there was a bit of pushback because players weren't finding the right rotation. So with the changes to specifically Machinist and Dark Knight, what were some of the thoughts behind why you would change them? And for the players who see these changes, is there anything you want them to keep in mind when seeing these changes? Anything you would like to clarify or a certain mindset you would promote for them? He went on to answer, we want to expand on the setup portion of this because I want to get into the background of why these were mentioned in the preface. So when you mentioned the ninja having a rotation that dealt more damage than expected, is that referring to the instance when the dev team acknowledged that in 3.0 there was a rotation that dealt more damage than expected, so the dev team would revise it in order to balance it out? I told them I can't remember if it was exactly Heavensward or the release of Ninja into the game. I just remember that some comments like that were made, where there was a discrepancy between what players had found and what was expected. They continued, and for the Bard incident, was that the time when there was cast times? I said, it was the cast times, and I think players were feeling that they weren't doing quite enough damage and they didn't understand how to. They were encouraged to try and figure out what was intended, but they were just having a very hard time. So with the new changes coming in, I was wondering if there was a mindset that they could adopt that would help them ease into the differences that they may not be used to from the current playstyle. After an audible sigh, he continued on. It's very hard to sort of put it into words, because in terms of having what kind of mindset or thinking should the players go into it looking at these changes, because even if we were to say something, people might not interpret it in the same way. Even if it's a literal copy and paste of written or text dialogue or text comments that were made on the internet, sometimes we might notice it's copy-pasted with a few phrases here and there missing, or certain people have, and I don't know if it was fabricated or if it was just a word-of-mouth sort of game of telephone. But over the course of 6 years, sometimes there are instances where I find people coming to me saying that, you said this, but it was nothing that I had brought up. And there's this really strange image that's been put into people's minds. So all I can do is provide as honestly as possible the information that is available whenever they do become available and ready to relate to the players. So that's what we've been trying to do at least. I think it's also not optimal if we are sort of dictating to our players, this is what Yoshida is going to say, and you should be able to accept it because it is what he said. Because, I mean, we're all human. Sometimes there are mistakes that were made. And if we do realize on our end there has been sort of a discrepancy or mistake or any sort of misstep, we try to recover as quickly as we can. So the best thing we can do is to relay and convey what we feel as accurately and as honestly as possible. And if there is anything that is incorrect or inaccurate, please let us know. Provide feedback so that we can acknowledge it, identify it, and revise it if needed. It's just repeating that process over and over again. So, going back to your question, let's touch upon the Dark Knight first. I think with any action you take as a Dark Knight, it's Dark Arts, then attack, Dark Arts, then something else, Dark Arts, and then something else. A lot of feedback we received was, what a pain in the butt. So I think that's a more straightforward update that we've made and people will accept it. They'll be like, yeah, that's totally what it is, and hopefully there's not much of a shock in that aspect. In terms of the Machinist, I think there was an issue with the heat gauge and the concept of having that gauge there, and it was hard to tell that, is it a good thing if it accumulates all the way? Do we need to reduce the bar on it? Etc, etc. It was very difficult to understand what the optimal state is, how to maneuver around that gauge, and on top of that, that made it very not fun to play Machinist. When the dev team were reviewing and reassessing the Machinist, we felt that we may have placed too heavy an emphasis on the gun. They're a machinist, but they were almost as if though they were a gunner. So we wanted to revise that concept as well. In terms of the heat gauge, we made it so that it's something that you should accumulate. It's a good thing if you do it, and sort of made it uniform in that way. In terms of the weapons that the machinist can use, we wanted to focus on the namesake of machinist, being able to manipulate different machines, mecha, weapons, and things like that, and sort of redesign the job concept. That allowed for us to make it more unique and differentiate it from the Bard, and brought a sort of excitement in trying to handle that job. So I think all of that going into it made the machinist feel as though we've redesigned it to be almost like a new job, as mentioned in the presentation. Of course, with that major change, some people might welcome it, some people might look at it and be like, it's not my cup of tea, I might want to change my job. But the development feels that, with these updates, it has become loads more fun to play with the machinist. I mean, you can summon a robot, so I made sure to let them know that I agreed. And it really does play a lot better, at least in my opinion. So it really has streamlined and changed, and at least in my opinion, I really enjoy it. I'm actually leveling Machinist up to level 70 now. It did take a while to kind of figure it out, and going into it as a new player, if I didn't have people on stream or friends who knew the job telling me kind of what was going on, it would be a confusing mess for someone like me. I just see walls and walls of text, and even though at its core it might be simple to understand, or once you get the hang of it, it gets kind of more streamlined, going into it, it's very intimidating and something that I agree, I had no idea how to handle the heat gauge, because you think overheat and that's a bad thing, or at least it has a negative connotation, but then, you know, you read more and more of the tooltips, which are only unlocked after you level up more and more, and then you figure out, oh, that's the rotation that I'm supposed to go for, that's why this is a thing. But the way that the skill progression works in Final Fantasy XIV isn't really conducive to letting you know the end goal of your rotation. You're just kind of dealing with it as you go, and yeah, just all the changes. Still shooting pew pew pew, still very fun, still very satisfying, but a lot more streamlined, and I could look at it in the span of maybe 30 minutes and get a better feel of, okay, this is where I'm supposed to go with this rotation, this is the goal, this is where I'm heading towards. A lot easier for a dum-dum like me to figure out. That's all I'll say, okay? Just go check it out for yourself, and hopefully you guys agree. Now, after that, I wasn't sure if I'd have any time to ask any other questions, so I didn't have a whole lot prepared, but I did have a bit of curiosity about crafters and gatherers, so I went on to ask them. Is there anything regarding changes to gathering and crafting aside from what's in the hub world that we should be looking forward to, or something that changed them in any significant way? Or is there just, in your opinion, improvements? He answered. So of course, with the Disciples of Hand and Disciples of Land, we do have information that's forthcoming, and we were actually trying to put together a presentation, but when we looked at the document, it was a massive amount of information. So since we decided that E3 is pretty close, we decided to separate it from the overall presentation and have that information reveal at E3 time. So this time we didn't bring it up during our presentation. With the crafters and gatherers, there will be fine adjustments made to the UI as well as different recipes that are associated with it, and we will be making updates that will improve on the usability. Plus, there will be revisions made to the different actions that are associated with each of the different classes, so I think that would be a fairly major change that will be coming. So again, we will have more information available during E3 timing for that. It's not the biggest thing that I do, but I do enjoy crafting as a kind of mini game. If they're making it more streamlined and allow people to enjoy it more, get more people in, then I'm all for that. I definitely enjoyed what they did to it in Stormblood. If you guys haven't checked it out, you still have to level up, but getting the quests from 60 to 70, you don't have to do nearly as much work. You just have to know your rotation for the most part, understand the abilities, but you don't have to get the materials together. They give you the stuff that you need, and it's kind of like almost like a practice synthesis. Like you get to practice the new abilities that you've gotten up to this point, see how far your gear has come, and it's really handy. It's a lot more straightforward, a lot faster paced, and I just breezed right through crafting this time around, whereas before it was a bit of a chore, and I would even just leave quests for months on end because I didn't want to gather certain materials or what have you for different crafts that were pretty either expensive to get together or just an overall pain in the butt. But with that being said, that was about all I had for really direct expansion stuff, and we had about 15 minutes left. And I wanted to leave time for Spofie to have her question, but I had something that, if I had the time, that I would ask. So, if those of you who are Monster Hunter fans with me, this is the time to pay attention. I asked him, so in the last expansion you did a crossover event with Monster Hunter World. And I love the series, and they're coming out with Iceborne a little bit after Shadowbringers is launched. If you were to do another crossover, what would be your... what monster would you like to see come to Eorzea? The answer he gave was... I was hoping one thing, and then, well, you know what? I'm just gonna play the audio, and you can make of it what you will.
悩ましいな。アイスボーンに出てくる情報、飛竜の隠し情報聞いてないんだよな、カプコンチームから。ただ、まあわかんない。やってみて面白そうなのはラージャンとかナルガクルガとか、ものすごいスピードが速い飛竜だと。すごいエキサイティングじゃないかなって思ったりはするけどね。
But that being said, I don't know the English.
Rajan. I don't like that one.
There's dragons that had.
みんながものすごい勢いで死んでいくイメージしかわからないけどね。
Although
he's mean. Rajan is mean.
今度モンスターハンターワールドチームに会ったら聞いておきますよ。
Oh. I hope he doesn't get what he wants. I really hope that he doesn't do that to us. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I really appreciated the opportunity to go to this media tour event, and I really hope that I get to do it for the next expansion. I hope I'm still doing this. I hope that the game is still doing well. But this was, I mean, they treated us well. We had a blast. We had so many accommodations, and they treated us they treated us with respect. They treated us kindly, and it was really overall an enjoyable experience, and I'm really excited to be able to bring this to you. It's been very tough keeping things under wraps up until this point, but it was a surreal experience getting to be that close to Yoshida-san and getting the chance to ask these questions. Tried to keep them as respectful as possible because, like I said, they were respectful to us the entire time. If I ever get the chance again, I would like to ask more questions about kind of the ideas going behind Monk. I know that Larizor asked a question, and something kind of tied into that. So if you haven't yet, go and check his interview out. It should be very good for you guys. So anyway, that's it for now. I hope you guys had fun with this. More videos to come, or they should be up already. So if you haven't checked them out, go look into that. It should be all the job actions and how they play, and at the very least a brief overview of some of the changes that were made and that were things that are coming. So thank you once again, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you have a great rest of your day. God bless you all, and we will see you next time.